Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
Greetings, and thank you so much for joining me, Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Herbally Yours brings you the latest information about the many facets in the world of natural living. Today, we are so pleased to have as our guest Dr. Joel Kahn. Dr. Joel Kahn is a cardiologist and a clinical professor of medicine at Wayne State University School of Medicine. He is known as America's Healthy Heart Doc, and he is triple board certified in internal medicine, cardiovascular medicine, and interventional cardiology. Dr. Kahn has published many books, including Your Whole Heart Solution, Dead Execs Don't Get Bonuses, The Plant-Based Solution, and his new book, Lipoprotein, The Heart's Silent Killer. Dr. Kahn has appeared on Dr. Phil, The Doctor Show, Dr. Oz, as well as Larry King Live, and he is the owner of Green Space and Go, a health restaurant in Detroit. He also serves as medical director of the Plant Support Group, which is, not sure the name of it, but it's pbnsg.org. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Kahn.
Thank you very much. Let's help some people and talk some heart disease.
Well, what is the name of your plant support group? Because I had the website, but not the name.
A plant-based nutrition support group, which is also PBNSG.
Okay, so it's plant-based nutrition support group for those who want to find out more. And of course, they can find out more about you and all your work and all your books at drjoelkahn.com. That's DRJOELKAHN.com. So that is really fantastic. Now, Dr. Kahn, what brought you into being interested in becoming a cardiologist in the first place?
Actually, I had a little murmur. A murmur is a noise that a doctor hears with a stethoscope. Actually, as an infant, and at age 1 year, I had a little test called a catheterization just to determine if it was anything important. I don't remember. My mother remembers. She undoubtedly bit some nails off that day for fright. But anyways, everything turned out fine and never needed anything done, never had any limitation. But it got me around, doctors from age 1 year old on every year. All kinds of fancy bells and smells and lights and tests. And I actually thought it was pretty interesting, something I'd never seen before. I mean, some of it was a little frightening. And if you would have asked me about age 12, 13, 14, what do you want to do when you're growing up, I would have said be a heart doctor. So kind of had an early path.
That's really excellent. So that's something in spiritual circles that's called finding your dharmic path. Like feeling that you are in sync with what you're doing, with your life's purpose, with your profession.
Yeah, there's a Yiddish word, beshert, meaning sort of destined. So we can go with that one too.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really true. And, I think that's wonderful because it seems like your focus at this time, even calling something like the medicine that you do, alternative medicine, I don't think that's what it is. I think it's good medicine based on science and evidence.
I agree with you. There's conventional medicine, which we can question why did prescription drugs and surgery and advanced testing become the norm before there was a discussion about lifestyle. What's your diet, what's your sleep, what's your stress, what's your background growing up, fundamental questions that clearly have an impact on health. Economics are part of it. Machismo's part of it. Replacing a hip is easier than a stem cell injection, an ozone shot, or physical therapy. It's not easier, but it's more aggressive and manly. But when you look at the end of the day, we should, almost always, except for acute emergencies, give people an option, give people time, 3, 6, 12 months, to realize the body will heal itself of so many conditions if the inciting and annoying, circumstance is removed and you replace it with healthy habits.
And we are seeing certainly more now than before, since I became a nurse in 1973, and back then they actually said, right to my face, that what you eat has nothing to do with health. That was what the doctors actually said. And I would say at this point in time, it's very, very well substantiated that it does. So if you go to your own cardiologist, not someone as knowledgeable as you, very often they're just saying now, eat healthy, and they leave it at that. But in the clinics I've worked in, which are holistic centers, we had a nutritionist sit down and evaluate the person's food intake and make it a big focus of what's going on. And it would also be individualized, because that sentence, eat healthy, would not really be completely the same for myself or yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And, there's so much confusion stated about diet in particular. I mean, there's not a lot of argument that sleep is important. Not all of us are excellent at it. And there's a dozen plus ways to try and improve your sleep starting today, without doubt. And similarly, fitness, everybody agrees. Smoking, always bad. But you get to nutrition, and man, you can get into a fight of fights. And it doesn't need to be that way. If anybody wants to see the nicest kind of central theme, you go on the internet to the Harvard School of Public Health food plate, 2011. And they took the USDA food plate, which was a pretty good innovation in 2011, but had a big glass of milk, encouraging you to drink 8 glasses of milk a day, which was clearly some ties of the USDA and the dairy industry that didn't represent the science literature. And the Harvard School of Public Health kind of buffed it up a little bit. And half the plate is fruits and vegetables every day. If we just simply did that in the United States and the Western world, half the plate fruits and vegetables, as fresh as possible, it'd be a revolution in health. Our immune system would be stronger. Quarter of the plate, whole grains. We're talking about brown rice and whole wheat bread if you're not gluten intolerant, and quinoa and amaranth. And then a quarter of the plate is protein that can be beans and peas and lentils and tofu, and tempeh can be a small amount of animal products if that's where you want to go, as high as quality as possible, and drink a lot of water. Boom, we're done. If everybody bought into that, we would be so further down the road with lower medical expenses, higher health, longer lifespan without illness. And we just fight about it all, but it is pretty much the commonality of all research that is a both very tasty, delicious, and scientifically sound way to plan your meals 3 times a day, 2 times a day, whatever you like.
I totally agree. And the way you put it, Dr. Kahn, is that it's really simple to do. The resistance is that I think a lot of the fried food and packaged food that people eat would have giant paragraphs on them and lots of meat, farm raised. That really has to do with a lot of addictive behavior. They actually add molecules of taste stimulating hormones hormones and other factors like MSG that is addictive in many cases, and people don't even realize that.
I agree. There's an amazing book called Salt, Sugar, Fat by author Moss that was on the New York Times list a few years back. And not the only book. David Kessler, the former head of the FDA, wrote a similar book. And it really lays out that we are just sitting ducks for the food industry when they're not really performing in a way consistent with our health, when they're performing where profit is the only driver. And when you talk about, the supply chain to McDonald's and Wendy's and Hardee's and Burger King and all the rest, I mean, they have the scientists that know that we have built-in systems of smell and taste and color and mouthfeel, very sophisticated. It's called Bliss Point, and they manipulate food so that with USDA subsidies at a relatively low cost, our brain smiles on it all, but then our blood vessels fall apart and our cancer cells proliferate and our joints get damaged. And we just learned this week, one meal, it was a fascinating study in healthy women either one day was 930 calories to mimic a Burger King double Whopper with fries and a malt, but one was of animal fats and one was of plant oil fats. There was a tremendous difference in brain function, with animal fats causing a drop in brain function within an hour or two. These meals are toxic, and that's probably the 20th study that shows one meal that you're going to find, at a fast food restaurant, a gas station, and sadly, many hospital lobbies, including the hospital I work at with a big giant Wendy's in the middle of the lobby, are scientifically made to just be addictive food that causes pleasure, but then it just proliferates disease. It's absolutely wrong, but until we recreate the system, and no more so than during this pandemic, should we be talking about optimal health as a strategy to avoid serious illness. But you just don't hear that message. You hear, distancing and drugs, the 2 Ds.
This is so true, and thank you for that perspective. And I'd like to remind you, listeners, you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, and today my guest is Dr. Joel Kahn, who is eminent physician, cardiologist, and is giving us lots of perspective on how to eat healthy and be healthy. You can find out more about him at that's drjoelkahn.com. And of course, all our shows are also archived if you feel one of your friends should listen into this wise advice. Dr. Joel, what you just said is true, that in the hospital, and we can talk about now the whole COVID situation, because I really think well into the future, this is going to be the topic. People who are actually licensed naturopathic physicians, even, and I know that means they have licenses in the state that they're functioning in to discuss natural remedies that are really great for both supporting immune health and specifically antiviral, and yet they are being attacked by the FDA for having that information available, and their sites are being shut down because they are not just talking about distancing and drugs.
No, absolutely. It is a difficult time for people in the natural medicine world, whether they're natural-oriented MDs or naturopaths or osteopaths or nutritionists. Honestly, the MDs are most at risk because the State Board of Medicine is a powerful board in most states, and you don't want to mess with it because that is your lifeline to practice. It's a little more liberal with some of the other specialties. But yes, some of my colleagues, a colleague 5 miles from where I practice in suburban Detroit, was asked to stop writing blogs and social media posts because he authentically was using some integrative skills to treat people that may have had the current virus or other viruses. We still have flu cases and respiratory syncytial virus cases, and they thought that was rogue to talk about nutrition and vitamins rather than surgery and drugs. And sure, things need study. We don't want the public to fall prey to true charlatans that have a snake oil cure in a bottle with no science. But you talk about vitamin C, the fact that humans can't make it, and it's mandatory to get both food-based and possibly supplemental-based vitamin C for optimal health. And that's the science. That's Linus Pauling. I mean, that goes back decades. And we're learning more and more about zinc. I never really appreciated the full spectrum that zinc had in health, particularly immune health. It's interesting. There's all these reports about people losing their smell as an early sign of COVID-19. And that's been a long time sign of zinc deficiency. Well, it may be that zinc is in the trenches fighting the virus early in the game, and it creates a zinc deficiency that leads to a loss of smell as a clue. Really an interesting new kind of connection between all that. But yes, natural medicine has thousands of years background in the Indian Ayurvedic and the traditional Chinese and the Sufi traditions. And, when these things are put to test, surprisingly, even, and I don't practice this, but even cupping and leeches. There's a famous cardiologist in Berlin at the largest academic hospital in Berlin who will take an old-time treatment and study it formally and publish it. He's a famous academic cardiologist. And lo and behold, he can document and publishes, that some of these old-time things actually do work. But, it's easy to laugh at until you do the science. And we're slowly getting to where the science is being done.
That's why I think a doctor such as yourself, and we are speaking today to Dr. Joel Kahn, that's Kahn, is so critical in moving truth and evidence-based medicine forward. And we do see, because you have a real focus on anti-aging and all the things you talk about in terms of moving more towards a natural plant-based diet. So it doesn't mean just no meat and eating lots of sugar and processed food, because sometimes I notice often with teenagers when they decide they're going to be vegetarian or vegan, mostly for a political or, emotional attachment to not consuming animals, they go to an animal-free diet, but it's all junk food, actually. So that's not going to be helpful either. However, you talk about aging and nutrition, and even coming back to COVID, aren't we seeing that those individuals with what they're calling secondary factors, like what? Obesity, high blood pressure, all the things that are linked to a cardiologist's knowledge, that's what causes them to be affected more by the virus. So it really fits together.
It does, and I'm a bit distressed. I mean, even yesterday, I don't walk into the hospital as much as I did in my former practice model. But I was in the hospital yesterday. I had a review of patients' films and procedures, a cardiac patient. And, there's still Pepsi machines and there's still donuts and cakes and cookies, even though this week there was a massive study published that women that have one extra sugar-sweetened beverage called a Pepsi or a Coke a week have a significant increased risk of cardiovascular disease. All you got to do is say, the world has changed in the past 3 months. This was a wrong paradigm to have a Pepsi machine in the lobby of a hospital 3 months ago, but it's absolutely adverse and one of the worst examples. And, it comes down to profit. It comes down to lethargy. It comes down to administrators caring more about a new proton, machine for cancer versus a health message that's, much more approachable and reachable to many. So, yeah, it's distressing that we haven't taken this terrible time in the world, health and economy, and said, it's time to face the facts. What you said, yes, there's a virus, but we have a whole lot of immunologically impaired people from lifestyle. There certainly are other reasons, but lifestyle does, as you said, obesity and chronic diseases like diabetes. Diabetics have twice the risk of not surviving a COVID-19 episode as non-diabetics. Their immune system is diminished. Let's try and teach that these are reversible conditions in many examples, or we can at least improve. And it's not going to be the chips and the pop. You're absolutely right. It's going to be learning to teach people to have giant bowls of oatmeal with walnuts and berries and giant salads with sprouts and red bell peppers and eating nuts, not chips for a snack, and taking walks and, and just really prioritizing natural health, natural maintenance. You get a car and you get a schedule every 3 months what your car needs, but we don't anywhere near see that kind of care and attention to the human body.
Dr. Kahn, do you discuss some of these things in your book, The Whole Heart Solution?
Yeah, that was actually my first book. It's by no means out of date. I shared it with a patient yesterday in my clinic, the Kahn Center, because it is the most holistic of my books. I think there's about 76 health prescriptions, all science-backed, from walking barefoot in the grass to infrared sauna to nutrition and sleep and emotional stability and stress management and such. It goes on and on. And yes, that is in that book, which did become a national PBS special, which was really quite a thrill.
Absolutely, because the information you're giving can save someone's life. And when we're talking about worry, just sit home and shiver until a vaccination is going to save us all. Perhaps the vaccination will be useful. I have other thoughts about that, but that's not where I'm going to go with this. But I am going to go with the fact that the discussion is out there in terms of lower income areas, those people being more affected, but that is really linked to the comorbidity that they have. And what you're talking about here, when people have the argument of, well, I have very little money, so therefore I can only eat McDonald's, I really have to push back on that, because what you're talking about with a bowl of oatmeal is certainly no more expensive than going to Wendy's breakfast. So it's really about choices regardless of your income level. And when you're talking about exercise, it's great if you can join a very fancy gym. I love the gym. But I love walking, and walking costs absolutely nothing. And you can even do it around in your house if you can't get outside. So it's not a matter of I'm not saying money does not make your life easier. It does. But it doesn't mean you can't choose to eat cabbage soup, which is actually delicious, very, very healthy. I use it as part of a detoxification protocol. We're talking about onions and cabbage and carrots and celery. If you could get organic, that would be better. But if you can't, okay. If you like eating meat, you can throw in a chicken. It would be better if it's organic. You can't afford that. I'm just saying there's not really an income-based reason to have to eat a lot of junky food. At least I don't think there is. And right now I'm not terribly deficient in funds, but I was as a single mother raising 2 children by myself. So, that's how I dealt with it. No, they could not go to McDonald's. Yes, they could eat home cabbage soup, with beans and rice. And it's really not good to say there's an excuse about not eating healthy that is necessarily income-based.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a bit of an art, but it is certainly it's the traditional foods that are the least expensive. Big bags of dried beans and big bags of dried rice and frozen vegetables at a discount store. And it's not necessary to buy organic. I mean, these things, and as you say, there's a sidewalk or there's a set of steps, or there's even, hopefully an empty Pepsi 2-liter bottle you fill with water and you got a little weight to curl and all the rest if you have no other recourse. That's where that community comes in, where we were talking about the plant-based nutrition support group we have in Greater Detroit. That is such a great now digital support. But, finding a community, whether it's your radio community, whether it's Forks Over Knives or nutritionfacts.org, there are online communities. There's a great book called Vegan on $4 a Day in a paperback by my good friend Ellen Jaffe Jones, a plant-based, world-famous athlete. $4 a day, McDonald's would cost 10 times more if there weren't government subsidies. It's one of the most heinous of governmental relationships that we're funding, poor quality food to make it inexpensive. And on the same note, we have to, pay for health problems amongst those that actually fall for that and eat that or have that available in their community. So it's a terrible, terrible cycle, but you can break it. Anybody can start today. Just, big bag of oatmeal for the morning breakfast, and, just frozen vegetables are just as healthy as fresh. And they're so much easier nowadays when everybody's a bit fearful. Just simple steps.
That's really, really great advice. Now, since you're a cardiologist, let's ask you, if there's a test that everyone should get, what heart test would be really, really good for everyone to have so they can evaluate their level of cardiovascular wellness?
Yeah, well, this is a bit technical, but it's also very important, so I thank you for the question. It's really ironic. I practice in a pretty Tony upscale suburb of Detroit. I have patients on low income. I have patients that are nationally known billionaires, kind of the whole spectrum. But I do also some work in some free clinics in inner city Detroit. And, there's limited resources, people that are temporarily out of insurance and obviously don't carry a lot of cash in their pocket. There is a CT scan of the heart, CAT scan, that almost every hospital, whether it's an inner city, suburban hospital, does for maybe $75. Now, we should worry about heart disease. It still remains the number one cause of sudden death in men and women. More deaths from heart disease than cancer, more than diabetes, more than auto accidents or any other cause. And we should spend a moment reflecting on, I wonder if I'm a statistic that could happen, because, we would like to avoid that. And there are ways to avoid that by improving your diet, improving your fitness, getting your labs done. There's this CT scan for about $75. So when I work at this free clinic, I can't ask somebody to go do a $1,500 stress test or a $800 ultrasound of their heart, which, of course, if they absolutely need, we'll come up with the funds and get it done. But it's not going to work for most. But most of these people can find $75. They go schedule this CT scan with a prescription. They get better care. They have more accurate evaluation. It's called a coronary artery calcium score. Coronary artery calcium score. I've written a book about it called Dead Execs Don't Get Bonuses. I've written many articles on the internet. One's called The Widowmaker. It's a blog recently. But, that's the irony. That should be the mammogram of the heart, or the colonoscopy of the heart, that we just get built in the system. In the state of Texas, it's actually covered as a benefit. Nobody pays for a coronary artery calcium score at age 50. They get a free one. It's a wonderful system because one of the legislators was just more forward thinking than the rest of the group.
Yeah, I had that done myself, because also they did inguinal, and they did it in a few other places besides just the coronary path. That was really gives you quite a bit of information, and it's painless, and there's no side effect for the test. So,
right, there's a small amount of radiation, less or equal to a mammogram, but a woman gets a mammogram yearly or every other year if she's on track. This is a one-time test, usually never repeated again.
Well, Dr. Kahn, we're getting to the end of our show today. I want to thank you so much for joining us, and just give us one drop of parting wisdom for our listeners.
It is really, again, I said it right at the beginning, but the body's ability to heal itself is nearly unlimited. And whether it's rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, whether it's beginnings of some memory problems, whether it's your weight, your blood sugar, your blood cholesterol, your blood pressure, give your body a chance. Take away the bad and put in the good. It's like an old-fashioned comedy Saturday morning cartoon. Get rid of the bad guys, get in the good guys. Good guys are fitness, sleep, stress management, and that Harvard School of Public Health plate. Half your plate today, fruits and vegetables. A quarter of your plate, whole grains. And I would always say a quarter of your plate, healthy plant-based protein, which are very inexpensive, like red beans and black beans and white beans and chickpeas and the rest. And, give your body a chance. You may be impressed how much better you feel in 10 days.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you, listeners, for tuning into Herbally Yours, produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, email us at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.